What's up guys? Welcome back to part 2 of how to paint a shiny Ultra Smurf. The interest from the last video was quite high, so hopefully this one will be just as well received. Here's where we left off last time. Just go ahead and block in all the incidental details with black and we'll make a start on the gold trims on the shoulder pads. We're using XV88 here as our base colour. Apply this quite thinly by pulling the paint up to where you want your highlight. Now I'm going to place these so that they match where the highlights are on the armour plates. So up here towards the top of the trim, and we'll also put one along the bottom here. Again, I'm trying to make these so that they line up with our initial blue highlights. You want to apply this step in a couple of layers so that you can create a smooth transition over the black. That's going to allow some of the black to show through in the darker sections, and that's going to help give you more contrast. Next we'll make a fairly big jump in colour with Vallejo Japanese uniform. Balor brown also works quite well here. This is the same idea as before, only we're covering a smaller surface area this time. So keep your paint thin and pull the pigment up towards your highlight. Do this in a couple of layers, making sure that the colour is opaque at the highlight. Begin to add some white into your Japanese uniform and continue building up smaller and smaller highlights. Now when you're mixing in the white, you should notice that your paint will start to thicken up, so don't forget to add some water each time that you mix in more white. Now for our last highlight, we'll just add a small dot of pure white. Make a thin glaze with armour brown and draw the glaze down away from the highlights. Apply this in a few layers in order to build up the contrast. We'll now use white to apply small, sharp, reflex highlights. I like to apply these as a series of broken lines and dots along the very edge of the rim. For the steel parts, we'll make a 1-to-1 mix of black and Mediterranean blue, and we'll apply this as our initial highlight over the black areas. For these round studs here, you want the highlight to be rounded and facing towards the highlight on the shoulder. To continue, just add some white to your mix and do the same again, this time covering a smaller surface. To finish these off, just add some final small white highlights. This area here on the sole of the foot doesn't have a lot of surface to work with, so what we're going to do is start off with our brightest highlight colour. I apply this along the edge of the shoe treads, and I try to do this with a random series of dots and lines. You can see that I do this fairly quickly. This is deliberate and helps to ensure that I don't form a pattern when I'm applying the highlights. Alright, so we're jumping forward a wee bit here. You can see that I've already got the backpack on, but this is just to illustrate how to paint rivets. So the technique I use is to first paint them black by placing the tip of the brush on the top of the rivet. Then what I do is make very small circular motions with the brush as I apply gentle downwards pressure. I find that doing it this way paints the whole of the rivet without actually having to worry about constantly tilting the model about to paint the sides. To highlight them, simply add a small dot of white on top of each one. We'll look at how to paint the backpack now. You can see it's already based in navy blue, and we'll just block these lower panels here in with Mediterranean blue. So this is essentially going to be the same idea as the rest of the armour we painted in part 1, but I think it's good to reiterate it just so the process is clear. So we'll apply our round highlight here on the exhaust pipe, so that it's in line with the highlight on the shoulder pad. Then we'll paint a band across the top of the backpack so that the highlights line up across each section of the pack. And we'll do exactly the same thing on the other side. Next we'll make a 1-to-1 mix of navy and Mediterranean blue, and we'll apply it so that it overlaps our initial highlight. To blur this out, we'll add some water to the mix, and we'll glaze over the transition until the hard edge between the two colours disappears. And then we'll do exactly the same thing with the Mediterranean blue to blur out that transition as well. To continue, we'll add another smaller highlight, this time with sky blue. And now we'll blend the transition again by glazing over the edge with a thin glaze of sky blue. Once you're happy with the blend, add another highlight by mixing some white into your sky blue. We'll just dot the exhaust pods at the very centre of our highlight. Then we'll add a straight single highlight along the top of the backpack so that it lines up across each section. And we'll also do some edge highlights like so. Hit the lower edge of each of these exhaust ports to make them stand out. Now for these edge highlights along the side, notice that I'm not making them solid lines. Instead, I'm trying to make them quite broken by varying the transparency along the edge. This is something I started doing after watching Ben Comet's. It really helps to give you a more realistic metallic look, and it's actually a lot easier than doing a solid highlight. Alright, so for the steel parts, we'll again do our initial highlight with a 1-to-1 mix of black and Mediterranean blue. For this part in the middle, we will highlight the lower edge here, and we'll highlight along the top of the rims at the exhaust pods. Add a bit of white to the mix and apply some smaller highlights. We'll also use this mix to pick out the piping details. Go ahead and add some more white to your mix and we'll apply some further highlights. To finish these areas off, we'll add some very small highlights with white. We're going to stick with white now, and we're going to begin to add sparkle highlights to the blue armour. To do this, you want to place lots of small dots along the very edges of the armour plates. Try and make these quite random. It's important that you don't build up a pattern. For this edge here, I've watered the white down a little, and that's going to let me do an edge highlight without being too harsh, because it allows me to alter the level of transparency by simply going over certain areas I want to pick out. Alright, back to our sparkle highlights. It's good to focus on where these highlights intersect. You can make the highlights quite strong at these points and then make them fade out a little as you get further away. You can see that the paint is quite thick here. That's so that the highlights go on nice and solid and you don't have to keep repeating your brush strokes to get them opaque. I think this is actually my favourite part of painting. It's a lot of fun to mess about here. It's quite simple to do, but it makes a big difference to the finish, so I highly recommend you try it out. For these moulded scratches, we'll just hit the lower edge with our bright highlight to make them stand out. Alright guys, so that's the end of part 2. I hope you found this little mini series useful. I might do a series where I show a bunch of different Space Marine factions. I'm not sure yet, it depends if I can find the time for it or not. So as always, if you have a question or you just want to let me know what you thought of the video, leave a comment down below. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks again. Bye for now.